You gave consent?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Welcome, baby, to the About That Wallet podcast show.
Thanks for having me back.
No problem. So, today, the reason why I brought you on is because I figured it would be a good way to end the year and go and talk about our financial history on how we met and dating and kind of where we are today. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
So, do you want me to tell the story how we met, or you want to go first?
I thought there was going to be more of an intro than this.
There's not much of an intro.
Okay.
I
Um,
mean,
well, I
yes, my
guess
my beautiful baby, my wife, my darling.
I didn't mean like you
Like,
had to face me. I just thought there was going to be more of an intro to the podcast than that. But if we're diving right in, um, how we met, Tinder,
yeah,
two
that
s-
is true.
two swipes right. And then when we met in person the first time, we met in a public place during the day.
A public
Lady,
place.
ladies, this is important. Um, uh, Low cost at a park, and we took a walk and we talked, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, I'm glad that you went very high level on that.
Yeah, but like, how much is there to get into from a financial standpoint from
Quite a
our
bit.
meeting story? Okay, well then I guess you should tell it.
Well then, I mean, we met. Well, once we said we wanted to meet in person, I decided that we should go to a park because in case things didn't work out for me, and this is just me talking, is that I could continue to run around the park if things didn't work out. And I guess you could have easily just walked back to the car because, didn't have to spend any money. Being as though that I didn't have any finances and very low income and pretty much broke. And yeah, so that's why I decided to park because it was a lot easier. You didn't change your mind or say, hey, let's go to some place to eat or anything.
Well, because I needed an out as well. But was money the reason why you chose a park that was so much closer to where you lived than to where I lived?
Yes, less money and gas. And
But if that was the case, then because I remember you specifically asking me like where I lived, and you were like, "Oh, we should pick somewhere midway," and then come to find out it was not midway. It was much closer to you than it was to me.
well,
So
yeah,
if that
that's
was
true.
the case, then you should have said that instead of trying to do the midway charade.
I was trying my best to, accommodate, you know, trying to meet you where you were at a little bit.
But not very much.
No, not much. So, coming from our separate backgrounds, do you think, just looking back at how we met, do you think it was kind of the best way?
Our separate backgrounds in terms of like finances, or our separate backgrounds just life in general.
From the finances.
Yeah, I mean, I had been on first dates before, and that's the way I prefer to do it. Meet in a public place, low to no cost, so no one is invested in anything except for time,
Mhm.
and with an easy out.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'll say it's I mean, and coming up just dating. I'll say this was probably the best date because it was like outside and it was simple and it was just easy to get to know you without too much distractions. As far as like if we were in a restaurant, you always had that person coming in and asking you, "Did you finish that yet?" You know, and stuff like that.
Or realistically, it was easier for you to tell me about yourself without any distractions.
Yeah, that's true. I did come out the gate with
Yeah, I
everything,
thought you
but
were going to talk about that because a lot
yeah.
of what you were coming out the gate with was financial.
Okay, so if guys, if you're listening, you can take notes if you're still out there dating, um,
Or not,
or not
because
dating.
it is a risky approach that he took.
Yes. So what I did when we started walking, I just came out and said, "Well, I have financial debt. I don't have much money. I have a lot of credit card debt that I'm actually planning on paying off. I have student loan debt, and that going on dates and stuff like that is often will not happen. So
You didn't say that.
ballparkly, it
I mean,
was.
you didn't say like dates are off the table.
It'll be limited dates.
You didn't even say that.
What do I say?
You said all this stuff about your debt and that you had a plan to pay it off. You didn't say anything like, "Oh, we can't go out because of it," or "we can't go out a lot because of it." And even if you had said it, it ended up not being true because we did go out a lot to places that required money.
But it was like once a week, if that,
That's not a lot.
compared to some things. No.
Well, a lot of it had to be once a week because you lived near your job,
Hmm.
I lived near my job, and you lived in Woodlawn and I lived in Greenbelt.
Yeah.
So weekends just had to be it anyway. So once a week was like every time we saw each other. So it was pretty consistent, especially the first couple of months. We were always doing something.
Yeah. We actually had good times. I mean, and plus there was a lot of stuff going on because we met in the fall.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then as a lot of people like to meet together, and I have a lot of friends, so circles of friends, and they
Yeah,
always doing something.
yeah,
And you were always like, yeah, okay.
yeah. Why not?
Yeah, that's true. So, financially,
But yeah, that was a risky approach.
yes.
But I guess from my point of view, I wasn't expecting us to get, or I wasn't expecting you to get into your financial situation at all. Um, but it wasn't off putting to me because number one, it I don't know, it just wasn't off putting. And then also you had a plan. Like if you had just come out and said, "I have a lot of debt," but you were okay with it, then that would be I would have probably had a very different reaction. But because you said, "I have this plan to pay this off by this date, and I have this plan to pay this off by that date," and I was like, okay, well, his attitude toward debt and toward money is similar to mine. So even though you had a lot of debt and I didn't have any, um, we're both working toward the same goal, which is, being debt free and living within your means or whatever. So that's how I looked at it. So even though it was pretty risky, um, you having debt wasn't a deal breaker to me, or you like not making a lot of money wasn't a deal breaker to me, but the attitude that you had toward managing your money and actually satisfying your debts is what made it okay. Although I guess it would have been okay anyway, but it was nice to get that out of the way so I could see up front what your money attitudes were instead of finding it out, months down the road or years down the road and then finding out that we are not compatible that way.
Yeah. And that was my goal in the very beginning, was to tell you everything that's going up front with me, and that, you know, if you don't like who I am with what I have, then it's just not going to work out. And then also, it was to kind of see how to start the financial conversations early and see where your mindset was at with when it comes to finances. And then when obviously I took the lead on talking about finances,
Very
and
much.
and you told me that you were debt free, and that at this point it was just saving. It was actually a relief to actually meet somebody that was financially, not really financially secure, but understanding how to manage your finances. And that was pretty good.
Now, if I recall, I didn't tell you that the first day. I think I was doing a lot of listening to you the first day, but it came up in a series of text messages in the next couple of weeks. I think we were just talking about life in general and kind of what motivates us and what I think you asked me like what gets you out of bed in the morning or something like that. Um, and somehow I think I came around to saying that like I was pretty pleased with my life and I had things together, and you were like, well, what do you mean by having your things together? And I said, um I was like, I don't make a lot of money, but I'm able to save and I don't have any debt. um I had just bought a car at that point. um yeah, because you and I met in September. I bought the car in June, so I had a car loan at the time, but um it was well within my budget, and I I was already making extra payments on it. So I was just saying, like, I felt like everything was okay in my life, and I didn't really, aside from the career stuff that I was trying to do at the time, I didn't really have any complaints, really. But I definitely did not tell you all that the first day.
Well, not all the extra about the car stuff now.
I didn't tell you about the car. I don't think I told you about the debt either.
Although you say you went to school for free, something like that.
I don't
I'm
think I
probably
said that. Not the first day.
it must have been me just rambling off that day.
It was. it it truly was.
Okay. Well, my listening skills have changed a little bit since, well, we've been together since 20, well, we met in 2016, then shortly proposed. I proposed in 2017. And when it came to the proposal, what were your thoughts like when that happened?
I was kind of surprised because in my mind, we had already agreed that we were going to get married. So I wasn't expecting a proposal, like a will you marry me? Because we had already talked about it and we both agreed that we saw ourselves going in that direction. Um, but I guess the actual like will you marry me made it formal, or like we were formally engaged, I guess. And then also kind of started the clock on like, okay, well, when do we want to get married and where are we going to live, and um, think like how do we go about combining our households and things like that. But yeah, number one, I didn't expect it to come so quickly, but I guess why shouldn't I have if we had already been talking about it? Um, and then number two, um, I guess it's worth bringing up since you just told everyone that you told me you didn't have a whole lot of spare money.
Mhm.
Um, you didn't propose with a ring.
No, I didn't.
However, that wasn't anything that was very important to me. Um, I did eventually get an engagement ring that I picked out, and that was affordable. So, um, but yeah, that was not really an issue to me, like the jewelry aspect of it.
Yeah, and that was surprising because even when I told a couple of my friends that I proposed without hardware, they was like, "You didn't get a ring?" I was like, "No. Should you always have a ring?" And then I think was like a few months passed before I even got a ring.
Yeah, it was about 6 months because you proposed in February and I got the ring in August.
Yeah.
But I actually at first was like, I'm okay with not having a ring.
Mhm.
And then I think after a couple of months, I was like, I think I would like a ring. And then I started researching, like, because I am not a big jewelry person. I'm especially not a big jewelry on my fingers and wrists person. So I had no idea what the different cuts were or what looked best on my finger or anything like that. So I ended up picking something and then we actually went to a jewelry store to try on the cut, and then ordered something cheaper elsewhere.
Right.
But it was definitely nice to like have that symbol of our engagement. Um, but it wasn't like I wasn't going to say no because you didn't have a ring,
Oh,
especially because in my mind I had already said yes. Like we had already agreed. Like yes, we are going to like we are together. We are committed. We are getting married. But we hadn't really um, talked about the logistics of that yet. And
yeah.
the proposal is what started that conversation.
Yeah, and it kind of helped out um understanding that you didn't fancy jewelry that way to allow me to save up a few dollars to get some bills out the way to pay for the ring.
Hmm.
And thinking about it now, that I think that was probably the best choice, was to wait and just kind of the delayed gratification of just a piece of hardware. Um, and seeing as though a lot of people usually fight, or not really fight, a lot of the guys just kind of like just suck it up the price of the ring because like, well, the wife wants this and blah blah blah. But what if things don't work out? And I always think of it as, what if you decide to lose the ring? What happens then? Then you gotta wind up buying another expensive ring, then the insurance and everything like that. Versus if it's reasonably priced, you can just buy multiple rings.
Well, and furthermore, um, I would imagine that saving up for a ring that's relatively expensive to have when you propose would also postpone a proposal.
True.
So if it's really about like getting your life started or, beginning the process of saying we are committing to each other, we are going to get married, this is the path we want to go down. I don't think that um a ring should be the be all end all of when that process starts.
Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, I didn't even think about it that way from the preparation
Yeah.
process for all this. And then also, if you get like a venue and then got paid for the dinner and the catering and all this stuff, that not really the catering, but to run out the space just for the proposal. And
Yeah,
then
but
all
that's
of,
assuming that you're doing a public proposal,
yeah,
which
that's true.
I'm not that kind of person.
This is why
So,
it's important to have those conversations early.
well, or at the very least, know who it is you're proposing to.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we had a conversation about whether I would be okay with a public proposal. But having spent so much time together and gotten to know me, I think by the time you proposed, you picked up that I'm a pretty private person. I don't like a lot of attention on me, especially not in public. So, like, a public proposal would have been horrible and a waste of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, why bother?
Yeah. And for those who are listening and wondering, how did I propose? I just kind of rolled over and said, will you marry me in bed?
I was gonna leave that part out, but since you brought it up, yeah,
Well, I mean, just to give them the full picture of like, it's not that I'm a cheapskate. It's just understanding that you enjoy things in private settings, and I didn't do the one knee thing, or pretty much it's just like one morning. Hey,
yeah, but like, why that morning? Because it was the day after Valentine's Day. Everyone, February 15th, very early in the morning because I was getting up to drive back down to College Park from Baltimore County to go to work. So, like, why not wait until, I don't know, we were having dinner at one of our apartments, or we're both fully awake at least.
it was something that's been I've been thinking about for some time, and then I just figured, why not now?
That's fair.
No, that was it.
Okay.
So when it came down to, I mean, I'm gonna just go full all in, baby. Talking about the reception in the wedding, like how we planned that.
Hmm.
So, financially, I mean, we already thought about doing a courthouse wedding, and then we were just gonna do the reception afterwards. Now, I can't remember if we were planning on doing that the same day, or did we plan on doing that separate days?
I think we talked about doing it the same day. Um, but because we wanted to actually have an event that people could attend for the reception, because we understood that not everybody was going to be able to make it to the courthouse on the weekday.
Mm,
I think that's when we landed on we'll um, get married in a civil ceremony. I think originally our plan was we'll get married like on a Wednesday or Thursday and then have our reception the following Saturday.
mm,
I think that was the original plan
yes, yep.
so that people can celebrate. And then at the actual ceremony, we had only planned to have our immediate families. So, like my parents, your siblings, and that's it. And then at the reception, then we have our extended family, friends, etc. So I think that's what we had settled on. And we also spent a lot of time researching which county to get married in Maryland because the cost of a marriage license varies from county to county. Also, at the time, we were living separately in two different counties, you in Baltimore, me in Prince George's. And we were trying to think of a county that had its courthouse kind of like midway between us because I think Baltimore County's courthouse is closer to where you were staying, right?
Yes.
And then Prince George's County's courthouse is way in the south of the county, nowhere near where I was living. So we were thinking of maybe doing the Montgomery County or Anne Arundel County courthouse so we could have like a
A midpoint
meet,
for, yeah.
yeah, for my family in DC and then your family in Baltimore. But then like in the process of researching that, that's when we found out that each county had varying prices for their marriage license, which I thought was interesting. Um, so yeah, that is what we planned. And also we were in the process of that trying to figure out where we were going to live because like I
Yes.
said at the time, you were living and working in Baltimore County, 3 miles away from your job.
Hmm.
I was living and working in Prince George's County, 5 miles away from our from my job.
Yeah.
So we both had very short commutes, and we were thinking that we would both be working the same jobs when we got married. So I don't think we really ever got to settling on a midpoint place for where we were going to live, but I think we were thinking about like a Columbia or Laurel or something like that.
Yes. Yep.
But then when you got a job in DC, that kind of settled things and it just made more sense for you to move down here with me where I already had an affordable apartment. We were already engaged, we were planning a wedding. So I think we ended up living together for 6 months. Officially, it was like 4 months because your name didn't go on my lease until December of 2017.
Right. Yeah, because I had to
Um,
cancel my where I
right.
was living.
So we were like officially living together for I guess 4 or 5 months before we got married, but your job started in October, so you were staying with me for longer.
So when it came to me moving in,
Hmm.
and I want to thank you again for allowing me to not pay rent at the time because I was still paying my rent at my prior apartment, and
Hmm.
actually allow me to save up an extra payment so I can break my lease.
Hmm.
So I want to thank you for that
Do we
because,
want to talk about exactly what the agreement was?
sure, after we
Might as
watched
well.
Judge Judy and
No,
signed some paperwork that you only responsible for this and I'm responsible for that. I was like, go ahead.
that's very important. I
It
don't know why
is.
you're making light of it.
No,
Um,
it's good. It's good.
but yeah, our agreement was so as Anthony has said, he was paying off some debt and he didn't make that much money. I mean, he actually made more money than me, but he also had more debt than me and more expenses than me. So his disposable income was a little less. So our agreement was that he would move in with me. Like I said, I put his name on the lease starting December 1st of 2017 and I would pay December's rent and January's rent on my own and he would just pay for I think you were just paying for groceries.
Yes, that's what I was paying for.
Yeah. And then as far as like utilities, at the time my apartment had utilities included, so we weren't paying Pepco or WSSC directly. So really it was just internet. So I was paying rent and internet for December 2017 and January 2018, and that was so that Anthony could recoup the money he had to lay out to break his lease, which I think was like 2 months rent.
Yes, yep, it was too much rent.
Yeah. And so get kind of like back on the footing where he was before breaking his lease. And then what we started doing in February of 2018 was splitting the rent and the internet. And then when we did that, um, it ended up being like a gain for both of us because I only had to pay half of my rent and Anthony only had to pay what ended up being the equivalent of like 2/3
Yeah,
of
of my
your
rent.
rent.
Yeah.
So we were both saving money. Um, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
But
and not only
also,
oh, go ahead.
but also, like I was saying, we have similar attitudes toward money. So making that switch wasn't as difficult as it would be if we had to have the whole conversation of how do you pay your bills and whatever else right before we made that decision.
Yeah, and the main reason why we stayed separate for so long, even after the proposal, and the reason why I even moved in the first place was because we were planning to get married. If we wasn't planning to get married, I would never have moved in. Um,
And I would never have let you.
True. I mean, we would never had came to that agreement of such things, and I did ask you if it was okay.
Yeah, I would have never suggested that you move in if we weren't already engaged at all. Um, but you were actually talking about getting like your own separate apartment down in this area without taking into account that you were not going to find an apartment of the same quality for the same price in in this DC metro area as compared to the Baltimore area.
Yeah.
And the apartment that I had was kind of an outlier in that um, the utilities were included. It was relatively cheap. Um, it was a nice apartment, top floor. Um, but if I had been renting a similar apartment from like a management company, I probably would have been paying maybe $200 to $300 more than I was. So,
Well, and we made it work. Yay.
yay.
So now that we've have already talked about being moved in, we've already discussed getting to the next phases in our lives as far as work. Then came life happens, and we weren't both. We were already prepared because we planned out a lot of things, but life happens, and we had to move up our wedding day by what, 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, 6 months.
And because of that, and we got married earlier than we expected. And because of that, it still didn't break our financial setting, which was for as the marriage license, which was still under $60, or was it $70?
It was 55.
Okay, so under still under $60 and able to get married because for one, and we were able to get our immediate family together in such a short period of time. We got married, and but prior to the year we got married, we were actually looking at venues to have the reception. And the reception had happened around I think we wanted to do that later in the year in October. So once we found a venue that was reasonably priced, I say that lightly because it was a lot of things that I was looking into. And I was doing a lot of the driving to different places because I have flexible days at my job versus where you worked at. You were working mainly at home. Well, not at home. You're working at your job more so, and didn't have as much free time as I did. So while you're out or even on travel, I was going to different venues to kind of see what the price point was. And I think our price point, we are trying to keep everything under, I think it was like 5,000 or 6,000. We were trying to keep everything under that price range. And it's a lot, it's not too many places around here that are under that price point that does all the catering, does all the setup, does all the cleanup, because some of the things that you don't think about until you're actually in the muck of it all and learning that this is something that you actually have to price out. So when it came to the actual venue, I think we settled on a place that was about 4,000 total, right?
I think it was 6,000
6,000
because
total.
yeah, because we had looked, or you had looked at other places. I would say the first thing also, we still were trying to make sure that the place was uh, I think we gave up on the midway idea because I really wanted my grandmother to be there, and my grandmother couldn't really do longer car rides anymore. So we ended up settling on a place in Greenbelt that was a little more expensive than we originally wanted, but they did everything we wanted them to do. They did the catering, they did the cleanup, they did the planning. We didn't have to bring in our own planner. In fact, I think they did everything except for the photography.
Yep. No. Well, they had a
And
photographer and a DJ, but it was a little bit more pricier than.
right. And also, I kind of wanted to pick out my own DJ.
Mhm.
So yeah, it ended up being 6,000 because I remember our first deposit was 2,000, and then another one was 2,000. Then we had to
We
pay the
split the
remaining
last.
2,000. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, but also we weren't interested in having a whole lot of people at the reception. I think we were intending to have 75 people,
Hmm. And
which is
what, like 40 people showed up?
65. I think I counted
Oh,
60,
60
something
people.
people showed up. Yeah. So like the majority, just not everybody.
Okay.
But that's a risky run with any event. Like people get sick, people flake.
Hmm.
Um, so that's just part of event planning. But yeah, we ended up finding a place that met all of our qualifications. It had free and open parking. That was another thing that I wanted,
Yes, that
that
was
I
a
was
good thing.
concerned about. I didn't want people to have to worry about like finding a garage or figuring out how to park on the street or dealing with parking ordinances that may or may not be clearly posted, and then people end up with tickets. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. And so everything went off with a hitch, which was great that we try to keep. I think we calculated it, what, just this year, right? Or last year, of how much that
Mhm.
we actually spent for our reception altogether, including our clothes, my suit that had to be re-altered because I lost so much weight.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we came up to around what, 10,000 total.
Yeah, and that's also including my hair, my makeup, my dress, my shoes, um, the venue. It also included um, favors, save the dates,
Oh yeah.
invitations. Um, what else? Obviously, like your suit, like you said, your shoes, your haircut, your tie, your pocket square,
Hmm.
um, my bouquet, um, the marriage license itself. Because why are we
Oh
having a
yeah, we
reception
had that.
if not for the marriage? Our rings.
Hmm. Oh yeah, speaking of the rings, yeah, I got a good deal on our rings. It's pretty
Yeah.
nice. And then I didn't even wind up wearing the ring that we got married in because it was so small. And then I just wound up buying like three other replacements.
Well, I think what happened was the first one was too small. Like you could get it on, but you couldn't get it off.
Right.
Um, and then you got one that was a size up, and then you thought you lost that one, and then you got one to replace that one, and
Hmm.
then you found the the one you thought you lost.
Yeah, and this is the reason why it's good to have them inexpensive, so you can get, get so many. Because I haven't wore rings in a while, so
Me either.
yeah. And I don't even think we wear them now unless we're going out together.
And even then, it's a toss up.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess I guess we're horrible with this thing, aren't we?
Who are we trying to convince?
Yeah, that's true.
I know
We,
we're married. You know we're married.
yeah, and we both trust each other. I mean, that's the ultimate thing through this whole process.
When on top of that, like I'm not going anywhere right now. It's not just wearing a ring for myself in the house. I mean, I guess some people do that, but
Yeah, as long as you know where it's at.
yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah, it's on the dresser.
Okay.
It's where I left it on the last day I actually went to work because I was wearing it when I went to work.
Now, this is the engagement ring or the actual wedding band?
The wedding band. I haven't worn
Okay.
the engagement ring in a while,
Okay.
which is another reason why I wasn't concerned about having one or having it be of a certain value because I know me and I'm not a ring person.
Yeah.
I like the way they look on my hand. Do I actually feel like dealing with it all day? No, not usually. But I was because I was like, oh, well, I'm married, going to work. They put on my wedding band and my watch. And
And then you lose the wedding band, and then I go buy like three more of those.
I didn't lose the wedding band.
What happened
You
to the other?
lost you lost your wedding band.
Then why we got like six wedding bands for you then? Oh, that's right. You wanted different colors.
You bought me three to begin with. One
Hmm.
gold, one silver, one rose gold.
Right.
And then I think one year for Christmas, I wanted one that fit better with my engagement ring, which has a thin square band, whereas the bands that you originally got me were thicker and rounded. So by my count, I only have four. I think at
Okay.
this point, you have more wedding bands than I do.
Yes, because you bought me a set of rubber bands,
Silicon.
silicone bands, rubber.
Furthermore, you said you wanted them.
Yes, I did, and you got them.
Yes, I
You're
did.
right. Well, I mean, I didn't expect you to get them.
You don't expect me to get anything,
No, because I don't ask for much.
but you talk about wanting a lot and then are surprised that I'm listening to you.
Yeah, I have a lot of wants, but I don't really need them.
Well, that's what gifts are supposed to be, what you want.
Yeah, good thing Christmas is tomorrow. I get to see what my presents are.
Indeed.
Anyway, back to this show. Uh, so we had the wedding. The reception went off pretty well. I actually think it went off great. The photos came back pretty nicely.
Hmm.
Um, so what did you think? What were your thoughts of the reception?
I thought it was nice. Everyone said the food was good. And my main concern was that there be good food and good music
Right. Oh yeah,
because,
I forgot about. I talked about the cake.
yeah,
So yeah, when it came to the cake, because um, one of the venues that I frequent, I used to frequent. Is that right? Yeah, I used to frequent, and they always had good pastries, and I really liked their food from there. And when it came to figuring out, do I support this small business? It was a small black-owned pastry business, and then also because you enjoyed um, one of the cakes, a Kentucky butter cake that one of my coworkers made. And so I went on and bought what, five of those cakes just so everybody else can have a taste, along with the sheet cake from the small bakery. And I think that was our setup. So we had that in the center of I guess it was like right in front of us where we were sitting in the hall.
I
And
think so.
yeah. And everything came through at the last minute. The cake, The sheet cake, sadly, I mean, to our standards, it wasn't really presentable, but it tastes delicious. And I think that's ultimately what you want is a good cake.
Yeah, because like cakes can be pretty, but if they don't taste good, then what's the point?
Yeah. And to say that I don't want to brush over that we went to what, 8 weddings that year?
6.
6?
Mhm.
So many.
And
Um,
you were in 3 of them.
yes, I was. Yeah, I might have to show those photos of me in the weddings, in
To
those
who?
weddings, to the listeners on the blog.
Oh, okay.
I won't put you in there unless you want
No,
me
I
to.
thought you. I was saying that because you said you didn't want to show your face.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll probably edit this part out.
Oh, it sounds like you're gonna have to.
Yeah. Um. So let's go on. Moving on to the next segment. So now that we are married,
Oh wait, can we go
oh, go
back a
ahead.
little bit?
Yeah, yeah,
Did we want to talk about why we got married 6 months sooner than we planned? Because I think that's relevant.
yeah. Let's go for it.
So, we had planned to get married in October, like we said. However, we ended up getting married in April because my dad was sick and I didn't know whether he was going to make it to October. So we ended up getting married in the hospital where my dad was. So we didn't get to do the courthouse wedding exactly. Um, but in Maryland, when you buy your marriage license, you have to hold it for 3 days before you can actually get married. So in that 3 days, I was looking for somebody who could marry us because at the courthouse, you can just show up at given times and have somebody perform a civil ceremony for you for a fee. However, because I needed somebody to come to the hospital and do it, um, that presented a little bit of a challenge. Fortunately, though, um, one of one of our family's friends is a pastor, and my mom contacted her, and she agreed to do it. It was actually on a like we got married on a Monday. Actually, we got married on Easter Monday, um, and she agreed to do it no charge, and that was really nice of her. Um, and it was also nice to be married by somebody that I knew at least. Um, so ultimately, us getting married, reception aside, only cost us the cost of the marriage license and the cost of the wedding bands because the hospital let us use their chapel for free. Um, and they actually um, set it aside for us from like 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. that day and like put a sign out so no one would come in. And everybody in the hospital was actually not everybody, but the people who knew about it in the hospital seemed pretty excited about it because I don't think very many people get married in hospitals. But the people who were running the chapel came came up with like some cloth flowers for me,
Yes, yeah.
which was
I saw that.
nice. Um, although my mother had already had that covered, she showed up with a bouquet. But I thought that it was really nice, and I appreciated that they kind of went out of their way to make it festive. And then um, we just all went out to dinner afterward. Now there ended up being more people than just our immediate families there. Part of that was because some relatives were in the area to see my dad, but I would say there were still only, including us, maybe what, like 14 people in the room.
Yeah, if you include the pastor and her
Yeah,
husband and stuff like that. Yeah.
and I am.
Yep.
So yeah, the actual act of getting married didn't cost us much. Um, My question for you is, had we not already put our deposit down for our reception? Because we put the deposit down in February, and
Yes.
then we got married. We put the deposit down in February with the intention of getting married in October, and then
Mhm.
we got married in April. Had we not been the planners that we are and put the deposit down 8 months in advance, do you think we still would have had the reception? Speculate away.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk through my thought process because, um, well, if we had gotten married without planning the reception, then I think we will probably have waited at least a year before we actually did a reception, if we want to do one at all. Um, but ultimately, I think we would have just been fine, just having an intermediate um, wedding and just called it a day. Yeah, because we didn't need anything from like like how most people need like wedding gifts because they're going into a new space and blah blah blah. We didn't need anything, so when it comes to like wedding gifts, it's like, well, just for you showing up was nice for all the guests, but they all wanted to bring stuff. So, but ultimately, probably not. I think I'd have been fine. What about you?
That was a strange year.
Yeah, it
Um,
was.
but assuming that my dad was well and made it to October. Well, actually, had my dad been well, we would have never gotten married in April in the first place. We
Correct.
would have gotten married in October like we planned to. Um, so if we had not already planned and put down money for the venue that we were going to use in October, and everything happened as it did, and we had to move the getting married up to April, I don't think that I would have had the energy to go through with all of the reception stuff. Um, because in addition to getting married, a month after that, my father died. And then that's a whole other set of responsibilities, planning the funeral, um, disposing of the body, um, dealing with my father's estate, um, acting as the estate's personal representative. Um, all of that was a lot. And then on top of that, we still were planning
Yeah,
for our
reception.
reception, and
Yeah.
we were doing tastings, and we were talking about tablecloth linens, which are things that in the big scheme of things don't really matter, especially in the aftermath of losing a close relative.
Right.
So had we not already put our first third deposit down, I think I would have been fine not doing it. And I think even the following year I probably would have been okay not having a reception.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Like the longer it's been out, it's like, yeah, we already married at this point. Like,
Yeah.
what are we really celebrating here? So,
If you were there, you were there. If you weren't, you weren't.
right. And and that's the reason why I said like, maybe a year out, but knowing us, we would probably say, man. And we already had what 5 or 6 other weddings that we went to that year anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So navigating all that stuff at the same time, it's quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a busy year.
Very.
Yeah, I mean financially, it was at least on my end because I was in those weddings.
Yeah.
And so I had to buy my tux or clothing for each wedding, except for the first one that year.
Right.
I just
But
had to
then you
pay
had
for.
to pay to get to Houston.
Yeah, I did. Had to pay to get to Houston. Had to pay for the hotel, and everything else was taken care of though from that point,
Hmm.
and food and whatever outings that we did. So I paid for that.
And the
Um,
rental car, because you can't really
oh yeah, that's
walk in
true.
Houston.
Yeah,
Houston
yeah,
is a big spread out city.
yeah, it is. I think that was the only one we traveled for a wedding,
Yeah, it is.
out of state anyway. And then yeah, so going to different weddings and seeing how everybody else had their setup. Um, it was just kind of ours was the most low key and more intimate, I would say, than everybody else's. And just kind of reflecting on it, just from I know this isn't financially stated, but it just kind of gets you to think of what does it take? I mean, what is really the celebration of this wedding? Are you really celebrating for you, or are you trying to celebrate it and show off to, friends and family, versus just your immediate family? Because I think we talked about this as recently that weddings used to happen in people's living rooms, and I was thinking like, why not just have it in the backyard of somebody's house? And you brought it to the forefront that that's the way how it used to happen. And we were just trying to think of when did it start to shift to this whole big, like you had to get the venue, you had to have the limousine, you had to have all this extra stuff. Um, did we ever decide on when it happened? I think we just kind of gave up after that conversation.
I think I think if I had to guess, it was 80s, like mid to late 80s, when the shift began to happen, and then by 90s and 2000s, it's full blown to what we see now. I mean, that's of course not taking into account like people of other cultures for whom weddings are have always been a big thing, like Indians, for example, and Nigerians, I would imagine. But like just within American culture, it seems like there's been a big shift from like, okay, you're getting married. Here are the steps you need to take. Here's where you need to be. Wear your nicest clothes and let's get it over with.
Yeah.
To like weddings becoming events.
Yeah. Speaking of nice clothes, because on our wedding, like my shirt was so small, the sleeves were.
He brings that up a lot.
Yeah, because it was.
Yeah, but like you put it on, you
Yeah.
didn't know before you left the house.
When I put it on and it was like the last one, and I was like, the one that I really enjoy wearing had the proper sleeve length. That one wasn't available. So,
And you
and
made no plans in the 3 days that you had to
to
remedy that.
no, I didn't. So, but besides my sleeves being short, and it was just we just wore whatever we had in the closet
Hmm.
that day. So it wasn't like we spent anything additional for the actual wedding day. I think all of our like clothing and everything like that happened for the reception.
Right. Make no mistake though, like on our wedding day, like before our wedding day, I was considering buying a dress for the day, especially because the hospital that my dad was in was right next to Annapolis Mall. So I was gonna go in Lord and Taylor and just look around and see what I could see, but ultimately I didn't have time to do that. So I actually, yeah, I wore a dress I already had and shoes that I already had.
Yeah,
Came out all right.
you did. You look nice.
Thank you.
So yeah. So when it comes again back to the wedding, it doesn't have to be expensive. A lot of people make it expensive. Um,
Yeah, but if that's where your priorities are.
for the one day and then it doesn't last.
I mean, some people go all out on their one day and it does last.
Yeah, that's true. I think statistically, the weddings shouldn't be more than what 50% of your income. I mean, that's
That
really a
seems
lot.
high.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what some people go, I think, what, spend like 10 G's or more just for their wedding. And, but because they spend it so much, they actually go into debt for it. I mean, we spent 10 G's, but it was like we planned so far out in advance, it was easy for us to just kind of save up and pay. Um, yeah. I don't know. It's just kind of weird of how the weddings work out. All right, so we moved on from the weddings. We talked about how we were dating. Now, when it comes to combining finances, um, I know we both don't combine our finances, but what was your rationale for not combining our finances to one pot to pay our household bills?
Um, our respective financial positions. Um, it didn't make sense to me to open a whole new bank account when we both had our own bank accounts. It's like household expenses will get paid because we're both responsible people who pay our bills when they come due. I didn't see the need for there to be like an extra pot because that to me is just like another barrier or whatever. It
Yeah,
it honestly never occurred to me to combine finances in that way. Um, I've heard of people doing like everything that comes in goes into one pot, and I've heard of people doing it that way, and I've also heard of people each person keeps their own bank account and then you create a pot for household expenses kind of thing. But that just seems like extra administrative work for no real reason to me. Um, and then, like I said before, you, even though you make more money than me, you have more obligations to satisfy with that money. So I just have a whole lot more disposable income than you do. So by the time your monthly obligations are satisfied, then it's like I just don't feel like I need to know that much detail into like what all of your bills are. Now I know what the household bills are. I know what my bills are. Your bills are your business. That's the way I see it.
yeah,
Like it doesn't need to be that in depth. Now, you often share with me a lot of detail about your bills, primarily um, consumer and student loan debt. That's pretty much most of your bills, and like your progress you're making on paying those things down. But everything else, like I don't care to see what you spent on Amazon or how many honey buns you bought at the gas station
we don't want to talk about my honey buns.
or whatever. Like that's just not necessary. I trust that you are managing your money to the point where you're going to be able to contribute to our household expenses. So, and with that said, the way we handle our household expenses is like, I mean, I handle them. Like, I'm the one who actually pays them, and then you just give me your half.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
When
how
you
we handle it.
yeah, when you remind me of what they are, you're like, oh, I just paid it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, because one way or another, it's getting paid.
Yeah.
So, but also, um, It's like, things come due every month. So I'll tell you like how much the electric bill is or how much the water bill is. Those are really the only ones that vary because
Mhm.
the internet is pretty much the same every month. Um, so I tell you what those numbers are, and then a lot of times I will have already paid it by the time I tell you, but at least you know so you can kick me your half.
Yeah, I'll just put it in a bag and kick it over under the table at dinner.
Yes, that's exactly how it goes.
Yes, money bags. Where the money was at.
With a with a dollar sign outside.
Yes. And yeah, because that's interesting. And for a lot of people that are going through, I think, marriage counseling, I think most of the marriage counselors will say you need to start saying we when it comes to finances, or we do this together. This is our uh, debt and so forth. Um, but I think for us, and for me personally, I just feel as though I came into this relationship with the debt. I can handle it because I don't want it to be a burden on you as well. I mean, we could look at it. Yes, it is a burden to you too, but not really. To some degree, because yes, it is affecting me in some fashion, but I'm taking ownership of what I've done and what I've accumulated prior to us getting together. So, and I just take full responsibility. So that's one of the reasons why, like, I still keep you abreast on paying my debts. It actually feels good to pay my debts off. I enjoy
Yeah, I'm
paying
sure it
money.
does.
Yeah.
And if I had student loans or like a lot of consumer debt, I would definitely take the same approach. You you didn't help me run it up, so
Right.
why should you help me pay it off? I mean, some people have it like that, but I mean, if I had it like that, I would totally pay off your debts. Like if I just had the amount of your student loans laying around not doing anything, I would definitely contribute to paying down your debt or just paying it off completely. But most people, including me, do not have it like that. So, barring a lottery win,
I know,
then
right?
it's just this, this is how we are handling it.
Yeah. And for the most part, if anything new that arises for the household and stuff like that, we both pitch in together. So it's not like a one off or
Right.
one sided deal anyway.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Okay. So for the future for ourselves, baby, where do you see us in 5 years? Well, where do you see yourself first in 5 years?
Financially,
Sure.
are you sure or just in
Yes.
general?
5 years and financially, and then you can throw in general if you want to, so we can look back at this in 5 years.
Um, in 5 years financially, I want to become a more aggressive investor. Um, I haven't really started that process yet because I still have savings goals that I would like to meet. And I also have things that I want to do with my money before I begin to invest. Like, for example, I would like to have some renovations done on the house. Um, but once my savings goals are met and once those things are done, then I would like to start investing more. Um, Probably in the stock market. Um, I never really was interested in being like Mr. Moneybags on Monopoly and just having properties just because it seems like more effort than I'm willing to put in for just the purposes of building wealth. I would rather, I mean, because to me, like your house is like it's where you live. So I have a house, I have a place to live, and so that's really the only dwelling that I'm interested in maintaining. Um, so yeah, a little more stock market investing. Um,
And what's your savings goal anyway?
my savings goal right now is to have 1 year of my gross salary saved liquid. So
Nice.
that's not including any retirement accounts or anything like that that I have on the side, like just in my various bank accounts. I would like to have 1 full year of my gross salary saved. And that goal was born out of the realization that I was already pretty close to having 1 year of my net salary saved, or I think I had actually already um, reached that milestone. And I was like, well, why don't I just make it my gross salary? So I'm about 2 months away from meeting that goal.
Congrats. There you
Thank
go.
you. Um, so that's my like immediate financial goal, and yeah, then after that, I'll see about the house stuff.
Okay. Well, for myself, in 5 years, I see that I have my student loans paid off finally, and hopefully, um, I mean that's been my only financial goal really, is to pay that off, and then finally have at least two rental properties, condos, and actually fully paid off condos in 5 years. So that's my goal.
Cool.
Nice. Anything else you want to have say for our listeners before we go on to the last segment of the show?
Um, no, but I think our way works for us. I guess I feel the need to add a disclaimer.
Yes.
Like this is how we do things. We are not saying that the way we do it is better, or that the way someone else does it is worse. This is just how we do it.
Yeah. And I think I would like to leave is that since we don't plan on having kids, this is the lifestyle that we chose to do without kids. And so looking at it from planting a seed, like this is us planting a mental seed of how we do things and the strategies that we've used to get us this far. And if you are a person that's in that same realm, following our strategies can kind of get you to the same exact results of where we're at when it comes to that thing. So, um, and that's all. So when you just get a wide range of different people's perspective when it comes to finances and how you live your lifestyle. Um, so that's all I want to say.
Is that how you want to leave it? It seems like you just opened a whole new can of worms, or started a whole new topic with the kids thing. Is that going to be part part 3 of my visit on your podcast?
Sure, that'll be part three because we talked a lot about us as a unit together, and maybe we can probably talk about the kid stuff later.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, unless you want to skip the 4 questions, start talking about kids.
No, we can do the 4 questions.
Alrighty. So, what does wealth mean to you?
My answer has not changed from the last time, uh, but financially, wealth means you are not actively working to maintain your lifestyle. So that means that you somehow have enough money to do what you need to do to pay for food, shelter, transportation, clothing, etc., etc. But you're not dependent, you're not looking for your next paycheck to do that. That's what wealth means to me financially. In a broader sense, wealth is your quality of life and the quality, and that includes the quality of people in your life, the quality of your health, the quality of your sleep, and your emotional well being.
What is your favorite financial book or non-financial book?
I can't say I have a favorite financial book. So, non financial, I have so many. I guess it's probably The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. That's 7 books,
Hmm.
but it's all one story. I've read that a lot, and I actually plan to read it again.
Was this something a gift that your husband gave you?
Yes, it is. He got me The Chronicles of Narnia. He also got me the entire Harry Potter set,
The collector's
which
edition.
which is a very heavy set of books. The Chronicles of Narnia is much smaller. Um, but yeah, that's probably my favorite. My favorite genre of book is probably fiction anyway.
Okay.
So
What was your worst job?
my worst job was probably my first one. Um, I was 14 and I was going to ninth grade. I was starting high school after this particular summer job. And I was basically an office assistant at a nonprofit in Northwest DC, like around by DuPont Circle is where they were before. And it's not terrible. It's not like I was doing manual labor, but I was very shy. I was not used to talking to strangers. I would rather not talk to strangers actually, um, when I was that young. And my job was to answer the phones and basically do everything that needed doing around the office, like all the little tasks, all the admin tasks. And pretty much my task for the summer was starting this nonprofit's database. And so I just had this stack of business cards, and all I did was just sit in Access and type the information from the business cards into Access. That's all I did
Wow.
all summer. And I think so. Yeah, so this was 1999, and I was making minimum wage, which was a lot of money to me at the time. I can't remember. I think minimum wage at the time might have been 6.50 an hour. Actually, maybe it was less than that. Five
It was less
twenty-five,
than, it was
maybe.
525.
Yeah. So I was making minimum wage. I think I was working. I don't. I wasn't working 40 hours a week. I think I might have been working like 32, maybe something like that. And yeah, just entering business cards, entering business cards, and answering the phones, which, as I said, was terrifying for me at the time. Having to get copies made, things like that.
What is your favorite pastry?
Last time I said it was apple pie. And this time I think it's still apple pie.
Awesome. Well, thank you, baby, for your time. It was a pleasure having you back on the show.
Thanks for
And
inviting me back.
you're welcome. And now I guess we can have some breakfast.
Yep.
Right. All right, everybody. Again, my name is Anthony, and this is the About That Wallet podcast.